Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for joining tonight's Kevin's Home Circle session. My name is Itunolu Adebayo, and I'll be your moderator for this evening's session. Thank you once again for joining. I would like to know where you're joining from. You can drop where you're joining from in the chat box. We want to know where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining this evening. We are excited to have you join this evening's home second session. Thank you. So as we settle in, I'll be welcoming our new participants. If you are new here, thank you for joining. Kebu is a real estate technology company, and we have real estate accessible to everyone and anyone. So we ensure investors ask the right questions. We help them ask the right questions. We provide answers to the questions, and we help them get started in real estate, regardless of their budget or their interests and goals. So that's what we do at Kebu. And tonight we are having a very important question, important conversation rather, around Lagos property, what actually goes wrong, and where the money still is. So I'll take that again. Tonight's conversation is around Lagos property, what actually goes wrong, and where the money still is. So what that's what we'll be taking today. Before I move further, I want to see if we have new people joining us. If you drop where you are joining us from in the chat box. Okay, so today's topic, I already told us more about today's topic, and I think it's a topic that is particularly important for everyone who is currently investing in real estate or thinking about investing or has ever wondered what really happens to their money when a property investment doesn't go exactly as planned. Because when it comes to real estate, we often talk about the returns, the location, and the opportunities. But tonight, we're also going to look at the other side, the risks, the things that can go wrong, and most importantly, how investors can protect their money and make informed decisions. So this is what we'll be looking at today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure you are too, because this conversation is going to help us understand locations where we need to focus on, how to make more money with your property, where you should basically locations you should focus on, and the risks you need to avoid, steps you need to take, to make informed decisions and to make more returns with the property. And we have someone very well positioned to take us through this conversation. And that's our CEO at Skebo, Lucy Maria Abulana, who will be our host speaker for tonight's session. So he'll be taking us through the topic, what we need to know, and how to go about it. So if you have any question, you can drop it in the chat box. So during question and answer session, we'll take that up and provide answers to that. Thank you so much for joining. If you are just joining now, thank you for joining. We're happy to have you tonight. I'll pass it over to Jam now. Hi, Rosa Maria. Good evening. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Um, Hope you're doing well.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. So I think we can just get right into it. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we can.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining. We're going to make sure that this session is quite impactful. As every single time we try to do this, we try to shine the light on a couple of things that most people are not open to, or people are trying to figure out or trying to understand. Um, and feel free to ask questions in the comment section. So hopefully we'll be able to see that and respond as quickly as possible. Right now, um, today we're going to. Can you share the slides? Let me see if the slides are up. The slides up. Thank you. Oh, good, fantastic. So before I get into the conversation of today, which is around Lagos investing, where is the market, why is it important, what should you be looking out for? I want to say that Keble has been essentially one of the pioneers in making sure that people are well informed in the property space. And as for Keble, we help people to buy properties at scale, whether it's co ownership, direct investment, or sole ownership. Our goal is to make sure that property ownership is accessible to everyone at large, right? And today's conversation is one of the conversations that have come up a lot of times because people have asked us. We have a lot of concentration when it comes to real estate, and most of it is in Lagos. Why are we picking Lagos? With all the fears that is going around, why do we still provide more options here in the market? We try to diversify across board. Like recently, I'm just coming back from an inspection, and I was in Ogun State for most of the day. So we are exploring other neighboring states to see how people, to see what are the, will I say, you know, projections, what are the interesting things that we should be looking out for. But I think for most of the time, we always reason why we always do Lagos is one, is obviously the very lucrative real estate market, and one of the things that we always focus on is we want to make sure that if we're in a market, we don't have to struggle for demand, and demand is essentially chasing us, right? So as we try to expand our you know portfolio of products, we always have demand in mind. What is driving the demand, who is it for, how do we connect you as an investor to that market so that you're able to lock in as much as you can, right? So that's the core of what Kebu does in a nutshell. We have these sessions every single weekend so that people are well informed and they can make the best possible decision when it comes to their real estate portfolio, right? Okay, so today we're going to focus on Lagos property, what actually goes wrong, and where the money still is. A lot of people are still saying that are there still returns in the market? Should you still invest in real estate? There are better ways to invest your money, right? And I always go back to one of the core things, which is one, um, as long as people are going to exist, there's always going to be real estate to match up to that existence, right? The other thing is, as long as there's demand, cash would follow, right? So we're going to focus on a lot of things from the Lagos POV so that people that are open to investing more, especially through the cable platform, will be able to understand a little bit better. Yeah? Okay. So people lose money in Lagos properties. Yes. So I think that um, when I look through our entire portfolio, we've never really lost money. In fact, worst case scenario, you get your capital back, right? However, there are situations, and people have a lot of stories when it comes to property investing across board, on how they are scammed, how they are um, the returns that they expected from this investment didn't materialize. So people have this different, they bought property, maybe they bought it in 2023, and they're comparing it to the dollar, and now when they match it up, it's not as lucrative as they projected. So there's tons of reasons why people might look at that, and everyone is obviously privy to their own understanding of what is a loss to them. Um, but I want us to focus more on a lot of things in the why is it a wrong property. Like, should we drill it down to a particular conversation, which is one, is it a wrong property? Is it a wrong developer? Is it a wrong location? Is it a wrong price? Is it wrong expectations? Right? And I think that it's we tend to make blanket statement of we lost money without understanding, okay, what happened per se. Was it lack of due diligence, right? Was it lack of credibility, right? Was it a bad location? You could have the best developer, you could have the best CFO property, but like the location doesn't just attract the right set of customers into your property, right? So I think across board you want to be able to understand these different factors that could affect what your property or the yield you can generate from the property at scale. Yeah. So in terms of mistakes, right, there are a couple of mistakes which I've mentioned earlier, which is, title is one of them. One of the things that we do really well is that we only work with titled assets. We don't want a situation whereby, you're buying a land and it has, multiple owners on the back end and you're trying to figure out who is the primary owner. I think most of the properties that we've looked at or we've reviewed and also listed went through this whole KYC process where you wanted to understand, is this the primary person in the property, and what the title is at that point in time. All right, we've bought into properties that had CFO in view, and eventually over time the CFO was approved, and the price obviously went higher than expected. So yes, the title is important, but you want to be sure that it's not just a regular lawyer you should be dealing with. So lawyers have specialties. I always deal. We have two sets of lawyers in Kebble. There is the documentation, corporate lawyer, and there is the real estate lawyer. Right, you need to get a real estate lawyer if you're doing like big large scale transactions. On our end, we make sure that the lawyer verifies every single documentation, and they're able to provide even much more better context to what the title is and how the title process is going on. The second thing is developer. So developer is important because it brings some level of credibility. When a developer has a lot of credibility, they're able to go at a loss just to make sure that your investment is solid, right? So they prioritize their reputation above every other thing, right? So I think that is a good thing to focus on. And you don't test developers until something bad happens. Hopefully nothing bad happens, but that is how I see developers across board. Some of the developers that we've worked with, we have certain criteria for how we work with them and what kind of projects that we provide through them on the platform. So, for example, we will not work with a developer that hasn't done a significant number of years in construction or in development of landed assets. We will not do work with a developer that is their first ever project at that level. So let's say you're building your first ever commercial property, we might not work with you. If you're building your first ever residential property in a particular location, we might not work with you. So I think that enables us to avoid certain mistakes and allows us to pinpoint the right deals at the right time. Obviously, location is important, but not just location. It's a You want to have like a better reason for picking certain locations. You want to have certain drivers that will make sense for you. Um, Price is also a good thing. I think we've been really good with making sure that we buy properties off plan. What that does across board is that everybody's buying at a discount, right? And it allows for you to even sell below the market price, right? And realize some cash, some yield at the end of the day for all of the investors. So for example, now I think Nove is fully built. Right now, I think on the platform is going like below 5 to 10% below market price. What that means is that if our co-owners wanted to sell off the assets today, the likelihood of them finding a buyer is very high, right? So it just shows that everybody is sort of protected and everybody has some level of buffer when it comes to price. You want to get in at a really good price point. That's why most of the assets are at off-plan projects, and we tend to see that obviously, some of our projects are coming into the market now. So there's some level of proof of work that has shown that we can deliver on certain projects. Cash flow. So you are shown a rental income without properly considering occupancy management and operating expenses. So there's something we always mention, which is there is the gross income, which is like um, in a night, the property is yielding 200K per night, right? That is the big number. That is the gross income that is coming to the bank account. However, that 200K has to offset NEPA bills, have to offset cleaners, have to offset insurance, right? So you want to be sure that at the end of the day, the net that is paid to you is actually quite substantial and is quite reasonable, especially when it's a shortlets apartment that are being rented out on a regular basis, right? So most people are very they tend to make the mistake of advertising only the gross income, and because gross income is very large, you know, you get to see that from a gross perspective, you can attract a lot more people, right? Cable, we tend to stick to net income. So most people, if you're someone that is very aggressive on the income side, on the yield side, you would want to. It might not be your taste, right? Because you feel like, oh, the return is quite smaller here. um, but we always want to make sure that you're seeing the net income, so you're seeing what is due, and that growth, and that income grows over time, right? So, which is very important. And lastly is obviously liquidity. You want a situation whereby in each market that we are buying into, we want a situation whereby is in demand. So it's easier for you to find a buyer when you are open to selling it, right? So like we have projects in mainland, but certain places in the mainland that attract certain kind of cash flows or yields for you. We have projects on the island that are specific to that have a track record of demand, sales, and people want to have properties there. People want to own properties there, right? So it's very important to account for liquidity. These are the mistakes that people go through um, when they are looking to buying properties in Lagos, right? I just don't want to be sure that everybody is clear with me on that front. You can give a shout out on the comment section to be sure that you're with me. Yeah. Now, the price going up doesn't really mean that it's a good investment, right? So, for example, you bought a property for 50 million, it's now going for 70 million. The fact that it has gone up to that price doesn't mean it's a great investment, right? Because you want to account for a lot of things. You want to account for the documentation, you want to account for the furnishing costs, the maintenance, right? One of the best things that we do here is that we always, from a customer standpoint, when you're working with Cable, is a turnkey experience, which is when you buy properties through us, we tend to offload the stress of management, furnishing, insurance. So all you're focused on is making sure that you're just tracking your revenue and your income, right? Which is very important, So you don't want to buy a property and you create a second, job for yourself, right? What we tend to do is to make sure that we are experts, we are professionals, so we want to make sure that you have a professional that is managing your property and that is providing you with the best possible outlook on the likelihood of your income going up or down, right? So that's really important for anyone that is thinking of buying property. Yeah. So you don't buy properties in Lagos because it's in Lagos, right? It's we didn't pick Lagos because of just proximity. We picked it because it's a lot of factors. So when we are looking at properties on the mainland, we have a thesis for that. When we are looking at properties for on the island, we have a thesis for that. So for example, I'll just pick one property. We have Buckingham estate. It's likely the first ever estate that is being built on the Alagome mainland axis in the last 5 to 10 years. Right. Now, why are they building this estate? One, there's a shortage of housing, whether it's even shortlet or whether it's rental apartments in Alagomeji. That's why the if you go to Property Pro, in terms of the growth in rental income, Alagomeji in Lagos is the highest when it comes to growth of rental income in Lagos. sense, right? So what that means is that a lot of people want to stay in Alagomeji, right? They want to live here because of its proximity to the island. Obviously, office spaces are opening up here as well. Um, but the issue is that there isn't enough housing to match that demand. And we have this huge migration of people from Lekki that are complaining about the rent there moving to Alagomeji because they can afford here. So it creates this upward pressure on the rental market in this small little Alagomeji. Alagomeji is also a place that houses the train station that moves across two different states, from Lagos to Ogun State to Oyo. Now, one of the things I want to mention for everybody that is looking at buying property here is that this is just one singular location, Alagomeji. And this is we picked a property, Buckingham Estate, that is, at the moment under construction, right? And you can do the same level of thought process across Yaba, Akoka, Sulere, Lekki, Ikate, Ibechi Lekki, right? And it just shows that it's not just I want to buy property, but it's I want to make sure that I understand the market well enough and I can pick the assets that make sense for myself, right? So that's important. So why do people keep coming back to Lagos? I mean, I've mentioned it multiple times, but in terms of context, we're very small landmass. I was talking to someone, was it yesterday? Very small landmass, and over 22 million people are just cramped up in this space, right? So by default, you're going to have a housing crisis here first, right? So that's one. You're also having over 22 million people actually searching for properties. You're seeing people trying to understand, where are we, what kind of, where's the next place to rent out? Is this place affordable? The searches are climbing consistently. So this is something that you get to see that, oh, there's an active demand here. Yeah. So where are the places that have the highest demand in terms of, obviously there is Lekki, Sulere, Yaba, right? And these locations are, in a way, they give you a mirror to the likely demand that you, when it comes to investing, when it comes to buying properties, you can see through this place that, okay, these are markets that that is important for you to own, and it's important for you to buy properly, right? So give me a second. So in terms of searches, right, you're seeing that houses in Lagos, you have just in July alone, you're seeing over, 771,000 searches, right? In flats and apartments, you're seeing over 200,000 searches. In commercial properties, you're seeing over 180, at least 180,000 searches. That's just in July. So you're seeing that obviously the demand and the intention to own property has been is growing and is constantly being searched. And this is just on one singular platform, Nigeria Property Center, right? Obviously, land searches, people are looking for buying land, waiting and reselling. And these are the things that you want to be accounting for in terms of what places should I actually buy. So if you're looking at if you don't even want to take my word for it, you can search for Alagomeji, right, on Property Pro today, and you see the growth of rental income in that of rent in that particular location. You can check for we have another property in what do you call it, Akoka Axis. You can check on, okay, how much is properties in that location, and you get a pretty fair understanding of how the market is there, and you're able to now make investment decisions based on that. So these are the things that we tell people that, oh, some of these are not really rocket science, but what we essentially, our job is just to aggregate all of these different data points and pick the right properties based on data points that favor the investor at the end of the day. Yeah. So where is the money still moving? If you're deciding, you're seeing Lekki houses, Sule, Yaba, right? Again, like prices are moving across each, will I say, each market quite carefully, and you're seeing the in terms of capital appreciation, you're seeing that in Lekki has in just 1 year, you see prices have gone up to over 30%. Sulere over 48%, Yaba over 21%, right? And on average, I think we tell our customers across board and even investors that you can target a 20% capital appreciation year on year across board. And that's a very conservative way of looking at your capital appreciation, right? And when you're looking at your rental income, you can target like a 10%. So on average, all properties are yielding 30% year on year for you. It can go higher than that, but that's the base we are working with, right? So cash flow. I mean, rent is one of the things we've been pitching all year is cash flow, like having an asset that just constantly pays you cash, and you're able to diversify based on that cash flow. So I've seen people that have bought into multiple units. There's a Yaba property, there's a Sule property, there's a Lekki property. Obviously, all of them will not have the same level of cash flow, but I will always urge people to not be in a hurry to say, oh, this property is not yielding much in the first year, I'm going to dump it, or I'm not going to continue making payments for it, right? I think the major thing you should focus on is having a diversified portfolio that would always consistently give you cash, right? So if you have properties in in Ibadan, in Lekki, in Yaba, in Sulere, all of these locations are able to consolidate and make your portfolio a bit more stronger than the average person that is invested 100 million in one singular location, right? So I think that when you're thinking about cash flow, it's fine for the cash flow to fluctuate across different properties, but you want to be able to have a consolidation that says, okay, when I have this property here and here, I can diversify. So in case one property goes down, the other property gets to meet up with my own expectations, right? And that's helpful when you're dealing with properties at scale. Yeah. So we've talked about the mainland. So what's happening on the island? What's going on? For the island, I think we have two projects. We have one at the off Ikate axis, right? So that's Declan. You guys can check it out later. Then we have Phoenix, which is off Freedom Way, right? I think when you're buying properties or when you're thinking of some of the rental apartments, we thought about who are the likely customers that are going to stay in this apartment, right? So are they premium customers? Are they corporate customers? Are they what's the short-let demand there? What's driving the interest in that location, right? And as I mentioned earlier, Property Pro is already showing that this is the most searched location in Lagos, right? So obviously something is happening here. Does that make sense? And you're seeing that across even in terms of searches, you're seeing that Lucky Phase 1 is having over 27.1% of all the searches there in just one singular month, right? Ikate Elegushi 7.5%, Ikate 7.4%, right? So I think it's very important when you're seeing the numbers and you're seeing the demand, you're able to understand why we are concentrated on the island, especially around the phase one and Ikate axis, because those are the most searched places at the moment. Yeah. For mainland, it's a no-brainer, but we've diversified across board. So we have Akoka, we have Alagumeji, and we have Sulere, right? And I think the major thing is just the consistency with knowing that there's a university that will always bring in people every single year. So there is Unilag, and there is what's the other one? Forgotten the name, skipped off my brain. But there's Unilag that brings people constantly into the. There's hospitals that also bring. And then you're also seeing a concentration of businesses opening office spaces, and that leads you to say that, oh, okay, we need to figure out how to make sure that we house those businesses. Okay, people start thinking of schools so that business people will be able to take their kids to school as well. People want to live closer to where they work, so they'll start thinking of building a family there, right? So these are the things that when you're thinking about your investment thesis and buying into some of the properties, you should be aware of. And if you need any assistance with trying to navigate all of these complexities, I think Kebo has the right team to is the right team to sort of navigate the processes with you as well. So, like I said, what is pushing the markets? Lagos has a very small landmass, and I think the major thing is just there's so much pressure on the housing market that it's forcing the prices to go up, right? So, one of the things that the only way to sort of solve this problem is to have more construction happen, right? And actively have more capital flow into the market. So, you if we do not have if we do not solve that issue, rent would only continue to go up. House properties would continue to go up as well, right? So I think the core thing is just the supply. So if you're able to solve that supply, you're able to meet that. And for investors, I mean, most of you guys will be benefiting from that if you bought into some of our Lagos properties. You're going to see that just by sheer nature of holding the assets, the prices just keep going up. There was a news, was it this week? I had an emergency call this week with the engineering team, and all of a sudden they mentioned that cement is moved from 11K to 12K to 13K, and now it's at 15K. And instantly, the conversation that we're having is, okay, how do we deploy more capital to this project? How do we raise the prices of the assets that we already have? A property that was going for maybe 250 million instantly is now at 270, right? Just to make sure that you can account for the construction costs, right? So these are the things that sort of push the market to be slightly much more expensive. From an investor standpoint, obviously, it's quite beneficial for you. From a social standpoint, I don't know where it breaks, but the demand matches with what the price is in the market today, and that makes sense. Infrastructure is really important. So, like when people say Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, you want to be careful with understanding like why is this infrastructure helpful? How do I tap into that infrastructure, right? When people are building along the Lekki International Airport, I think a couple of months ago we went to Alaro City. They're building an entire industrial city, um, and one of their selling points is obviously the Lekki Free Trade Zone and this international airport that is next to it, right? Um, Everybody that bought into the Dangote refinery location is obviously making a killing. We have a property along Ibeju Lekki axis, and Dangote is willing to pay 2 years worth of rent for I think 100 units of apartments. 2 years. Like is there, you just want to pay you off and allow their workers to stay for 2 years. So it just shows that there is a market, there is an active market. So if you have a land there is a way to structure it in such a way that if you build on that land, you're open to collecting some of the contracts that are available and they are paying you off, right? Um, I was in Ogun State today, and we went to the cargo airport, right? And we have a property along that side. And the reason why we keyed into that property was to allow people to essentially ride the wave of infrastructure. And it's just consistent with every single thing that I've mentioned today, which is you do not want to be chasing the demand. You want the demand to be chasing. You want so much pressure to be on your asset that the price goes up without you doing, anything substantial. It's just how the market is working at the moment. So there are 5 points to note. If there's anything you want to take home today, um, you know, a couple of things that you want to have in mind when you're looking for where the money should be going to is people, right? Demand for residential housing keeps growing because you're looking at migration patterns, you're looking at people coming into a particular state, and it's creating some level of pressure across board. You're also looking at who the customer is, right? So who is this customer? And that allows you to define what you're going to provide for them. There are some projects that you do in Ikoyi that a Alagomeji or Yaba tenant will be like, this is not for me, this is a waste of money. But if you do not do that in Ikoyi, nobody will buy your property, nobody will sell, right? So understanding your market is really key, and that's why we spend a lot of time trying to navigate which market makes sense, which market do we understand, and how do we market it properly. Um, then identifying what creates demand, right? It's you want to be clear on what are the demand factors in that property. So, like I mentioned, for Alagomeji, you can visibly see that office spaces are being set up, constantly being built. You can see construction of rental apartments being built. You can see a train station actively growing in terms of the bookings every single day, right? You can see the schools around the location, and you can see the demand from that school constantly growing each year, right? So I think those are important metrics to look at. Obviously, you want to understand what the rent is and comparable in terms of the growth. So you want to know, is the rent growing, right? And you can easily check that with any listing sites right now. Like even on cable, we have a price projection of the last 2 years or the last 3 years and what we're looking out for in the next few years. So every most platforms will be able to show you some guesstimates on how much money I can actually make in a property. Um, Obviously, there are other factors like management. So property is not it's something that you have to maintain, right? But one of the things that we tell people is that you don't want it to be your second job. You want to outsource that headache to someone that can manage it and make sure that they're not calling you at night, for NEPA bills or something like that. Um, then you want to have some fail safes, like what happens when things go wrong, right? Because inevitably, like something is always there's always something. I always tell you that when you wake up in the day, just pray that nothing happens today, but there's always something. When occupancy rate falls, how do you make sure that you're very conservative with the amount the things you mentioned to the things people say, right? Even in cable, we're very conservative to mention that hey, our occupancy rate is around 65%. We are guaranteeing that 9 months out of the year you're going to be booked. So that is important to note, right? And the reason for that is that we see properties across board, and sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But you want to be able to have like a baseline for what is acceptable before you even buy the property. Yeah, all good. So where can you actually participate? Right now we have a couple of projects on the platform. There's Bradford Suits at Akoka. You can actually buy in with a 5 slot at 15 million, and you have a monthly income of 130K every single month, and that's for the first year. Then we have Buckingham. There's a Lagomeji project, and I mentioned a couple of times today, which makes sense if you're buying in bulk. It's is available for you, and we have a couple of discounts if you're interested in buying and making an outright purchase. We have Lekki Phase One and also Ikate Axis. So almost every single location that we mentioned in this call, it's we have those assets and we picked them deliberately based on some of the factors we've mentioned already. I think the link should be sent at the moment. We have, if you're interested in any of the offers, you can reach out to us and we're able to, walk you through it. If you're interested in the co-ownership offering, whereby you're owning the apartment with a couple of, like minds, that option is available. If you want to entirely own the whole apartment, we have that option available as well. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us and be happy to, walk you through it. Yeah. So most people tend to, just to reemphasize, you want to understand um, from a demand standpoint, you want to understand what's driving that demand. Obviously, documentation is key. We spend less time on documentation in some of the conversations that we'll be having because there is a dedicated team, focused on checking all the documents. So that's not a problem that I think of as much. What I mostly focus on is like, what's the return on this? Is the location a strong location? Um, is there a payment plan that sits well with my own expectation? What's the numbers and what's the worst case scenario? Right. From a legal standpoint, I think we're typically covered across board. Yeah. So major thing that we've seen so far is cash flow is important. So people buy a lot on the rental income side, right? But I think when you're thinking about investing in Lagos, you also want to diversify. And it's the same thing with just investing in investment generally. You want to have the ability to have options, right? You don't want to be stuck in a particular location, right? So whether you're trying to diversify on the mainland island, whether you're trying to invest in projects that are higher on the cash yield, and lower on the capital appreciation, or you want more capital appreciation and less cash, we have projects that fit those different buckets, and you're able to prioritize based on your own risk profile and based on your own expectations. Yeah, and I think that's in a nutshell. That's exactly how you should be looking at when you're investing in properties in Lagos. I don't know if anyone have questions that would be interesting, and we should be open to answering them one after the other. Thank you so much, guys. Itunu?
Thank you so much for the session. Thank you for the detailed explanations. It was really insightful. I learned a lot and I was able to jot a lot as well. Thank you so much. Please, if you have any question, kindly drop it in the chat box. We'll begin to answer the questions now. Thank you. So while
Awesome.
if you have any question, you can drop that in the chat box. So for most of the things I learned today, I learned the mistakes investors make, like the title, the location, the developer, price, and cash flow. And we also look at the specific locations like Alagomeji, Surulere, Lekki, Swan, Ikati, Ikati, Elegushi as well. And these are the locations where um, we have a lot of population. The demand there is high, so those are locations that investors can, start with. We look at that, and we also look at, like I said, we look at locations that the demand is there, and the population are moving towards that location. We look at that. We also look at the percentage of occupancy in those areas as well. Please, if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat box. We'll take them down. And finally, we also covered locations where we have sort of offerings that investors can key into, like Ikate, we have Betland in Ikate, we have Phoenix in Lekki Phase 1, we have Buckingham Apartments in Alagomeji, Yaba, we have Bradford Street in Akoka in Yaba as well. And these are locations where we have the demand is there. We have universities where people come in, they come out, we have researchers coming in for them. So there's a lot of activities in this area. The demand is there. And for investors that are looking into starting ownership offerings, these options are available on our platform, on our cable platform. So you can check and see offers that suits your preference, that suits your goals. I think that's it. Thank you so much, Miss Maria, for the insightful session. Thank you. I think we don't have questions. We have questions. Okay. For new participants joining us, you can connect with us on our socials. You can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, X, um, LinkedIn. Yeah, you can also connect with us on YouTube. You can follow us on our YouTube channel. We have a number of videos that I would explain more on these offerings in real estate generally. A lot of videos we have there. I think that's it. Okay, we have a question from Onoye. What exactly does owning 5 slots mean? Jam, did you get that?
Yeah, I got it. So yeah, 5 slots essentially, it's on the co-ownership side, right? So if you're buying property, right, on the cable platform, there are a couple of ways to do that. Is either you co-own it with other investors, or you're buying it solely. So what we did was, when you're co-owning the property, one share or one stake is a slot on the cable platform. However, we decided that a couple of people might be interested in buying, 5 slot at once. So that comes with much more a higher pricing power, higher rental yield, and some other discounts as well, right? So essentially, it's just a combination of 5 slots, and priced as one, whereby you're able to buy in bulk and earn from the property in a much more larger way, in a much more meaningful way. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. I hope that answers the question, Honoring. So, if you would like to connect with us on our socials and if you would love to speak to your partner, a number will be dropped in the chat box that you can reach out to, and links to connect with us on our social will be listed on the to be listed in the chat box as well. Okay, we have another question for Honor. Can two people jointly buy a five spots block?
Yes, two people can buy a slot. The best possible way to do that is if you guys can register like a business name or a C on CAC, and you guys own the company, right? You guys can jointly buy into a box slot. So you have a couple of like a wife buying a wife and a husband buying into a project, right? Or we have a couple of friends that want to buy and they register their company and they're able to buy from there. So yes, it's possible to do that. Even in one store, you can actually do that as well.
Okay, right. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we have another question. Do five slot owners get more rights than one slot owners?
Yes. So for 5 slots, we're running a campaign now. So if you buy if you buy a block slot, so that's 5 or 10 slots, you get 3 additional nights aside from the normal nights that you have. So it's just a way of incentivizing more people to buy and experience the property in a different way. So I think that's what we have now. The additional nights are for the first year, right? But after the first year, it's basically the standard, 5 nights for 5 slots or 10 nights for 10 slots.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. If you're interested, there's an interest form that you send to the chat box. You can just fill that out, and one of our partners will definitely reach out to you. All right, that answers. Thank you, Onoye. That answers this question. Thank you so much. I think that's it for tonight. Links to our socials will be dropped in the chat box so you can connect with us on our socials to learn more. And the number will also be sent so you can reach out to one of our partners if you'd like to talk to someone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you for spending your evening with us. Like we said, we have this home circle session every week. So we love investors or insider investors to learn about real estate investment, making it simple for them. And that is why we have these sessions every time. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Mhm.
I wish you a beautiful evening. That's it. Thank you. Good night.
Okay,
Bye.
well, bye.